Holy cats! There's a thing, and it's from another world.
The thing from another world. This is the spot where it was first seen, and these are the first people who saw the thing. How did it get here? Where did it come from? What is it?
Hey aficionados, Shawn and Miguel here, and watch the skies, because today we're taking a look at The Thing from Another World. Of course, this is the classic science fiction film from 1951, and it follows this group of people, this military base in the North Pole, and there's a crashed ship that they're investigating. They end up finding a body of an alien sort of vegetable guy. They cut him out of the ice. He was frozen in the ice. They bring him back to their facility. Somehow that ice melts and he breaks free. And the rest of the movie is spent trying to survive and somehow get rid of this alien.
One thing I love about this movie is the pacing. It just railroads right ahead at kind of a breakneck speed. The modern sci-fi movies and horror movies that we're used to sort of spend a lot of time building up to the point where anything of any substance happens. This is very much in the old school style of filmmaking where they really establish all the necessary characters within like the first 10 minutes, set up the situation, and boom, off they go to this Antarctic base to track down this crashed ship. So that's something that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, there's no backstories, no wasted time giving these characters histories and all that stuff. You just jump right into their conversations, and then the events of the movie start unfolding. And I really like that way of introducing characters. I like how they basically tell you everything you need to know about these characters just from listening in on their conversations. And their conversations, that's actually my favorite part of the movie upon rewatching it. I've seen it quite a few times now, but this time what really struck me was the discussions that they were having. It's just really fast-paced, like quick dialogue, lots of little one-liners in there too. It's just really interesting dialogue to listen to. And even when they're having these scenes of discussions and conversations, it still like is very interesting to watch, which is a big important thing in this movie because really you don't get to see the monster that much at all, so it really relies on these conversations that these characters are having. And it still really works.
One thing, though, with those conversations, it can be hard if you get lost to pick yourself up in the middle of one, because, again, they are so quick, and sometimes you miss a word here or there, and you get a little confused. But thankfully, the plot isn't too complicated. The characters are pretty easy to distinguish and to see what their motivations and personalities are. So you're not really going to get too lost if you miss out on those conversations, but I did find myself struggling a little bit during certain scenes to keep up with the pace.
And in terms of the characters, I thought that there were some pretty interesting characters in this movie. Of course, you have like the main captain. To me, he was probably my favorite character, along with the journalist. I really enjoyed his character too. They have some back and forths that were really interesting. It's actually some pretty decent humor in this movie that helps balance out like the dark horror aspects of it.
And going off of that with the journalist and the captain, they kind of represent different ideologies. Not completely, but the journalist does have this sense of he wants to tell the story of what's going on, whereas the captain is beholden to the military and sort of bottling up this controversy and what's going on. And you see that also with the head scientist character, who becomes sort of the villain throughout the course of the movie. But you see how these characters come to like represent specific aspects of our society's response to an outside threat.
Probably my least favorite part of the movie, though, is how they treat the scientist. A lot of the things that he's saying and his motivations, there's like good reason for what he's doing and what he wants to be done. Yet they do treat him like this black and white villain, like he's just the bad guy. And there's no gray area at all, so I wish that they could have maybe treated his character with a little bit more gray.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the scientist wants to preserve the alien. I mean, he wants to talk to it, which is kind of dumb because it shows no interest in talking or ability to. but he does want to study and preserve how it lives, whereas the captain just wants to destroy the whole thing, just burn everything, which is a little overboard. I mean, we have the seeds that are sprouting sort of like new vegetable men, but as long as they're just in their seed form, there's no reason why you can't preserve them for scientific study, and why the captain should have the final say as to whether or not the scientific community gets a hold of it. It's kind of a symptom of that old school machismo action story of the hero kind of destroying the evil, like utterly obliterating it, which doesn't feel entirely appropriate for this film. But yeah, it does speak to that kind of like that 1950s mindset of, oh, there's this other force, we need to be the righteous, strong, pure Americans and just ruin it because it's going to ruin our way of life and it's going to invade our society. They keep talking about, what if there were 1,000 of these things? And it's like, well, there aren't, not at this moment, and destroying them isn't going to fix, what you're worried about in the first place.
I think that they also handle the creature pretty well in this movie, because you can tell that the effect of the creature itself isn't the best. So they don't exactly show the creature a lot. When they do show him, it's never really really close-up shots, or they cut away really quick, and it's always in shadows and stuff like that. It was really effective, and just something about the creature just felt larger than life. Like, he felt like he towered over everyone. He really was like a Frankenstein type creature, and again, I think they handled it pretty well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think just the physical presence of the monster was pretty intimidating, even though his design wasn't very intimidating. But also just the explanation of what this character is, I found really interesting, that he is actually a vegetable form of life, and kind of how the main scientist shows how that's like diametrically opposed to us being the animal form of intelligent life, whereas this creature is the vegetable form of intelligent life, and to the scientist, the vegetable form is inherently superior for all of these wackadoo reasons. Like, oh, it doesn't have emotions, so that's better for some reason. It doesn't have love, it doesn't have a heart, all of these things. I actually didn't expect it to get that creative with it. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, a man from Mars who can't be hurt by bullets, blah, 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 blah. They actually go into a lot of detail as to like how it reproduces, why bullets don't hurt it. Because it doesn't have a circulatory system, so it's not bleeding when you shoot it, so it's not that big of a deal. So I thought that was really cool how the movie justified the monster's invincibility, rather than just leaving it up to, hey, it's a monster, so of course it's invincible to bullets.
Right, I mean, they don't have to do stuff like that. They don't have to put in the extra thought to come up with reasons to why this character is invincible. It kind of reminds me of like Alien a little bit, where they do explain away all these defense mechanisms and what makes this creature. And it helps add to the believability a little bit, too, of the character of the alien. But in terms of, like, scare factor or creepiness, I would say that the movie isn't necessarily scary or creepy at all. It is very heavy on atmosphere, though. And I do like the setting a lot. Just being set in that Arctic region, basically trapped indoors. It's very claustrophobic. The movie, to me, does a really nice bait and switch also, because the way it starts off, you're with these characters, these fun characters inside playing cards and stuff like that, and just the fact that you're trapped inside during this winter, it kind of has like a cozy feel to it, but then as soon as the alien shows up, it switches into a claustrophobic feel. So it goes from like being trapped inside, almost being like a good thing, to being like, oh crap, we're trapped inside.
And of course, being 1950s sci-fi, it has the obligatory love interest story, which isn't as, bad as a lot of other movies from this era. The female character is actually pretty witty and interesting, and she has a good sense of humor and sort of asserts herself in different ways with the captain. There's one point where she even ties him up for fun.
It is the 50s, so...
Yeah, exactly. Her character isn't really developed very much, and she kind of gets played off almost as just like a token female character, almost as a joke. Oh, of course, they're going to marry her off to the captain, or whatever. She's going to force the captain to settle down, and it's just like, they could have done so much more with the dynamics of that, but really she's like a note taker for the scientists, so she's pretty much just a secretary and a love interest throughout the film. So
also, I do have to mention the ending of the movie. I mean, it's very ominous, and I just really respect the way that movie ended. And if you really think about it in terms of like the context and what was going on in the world at the time, it really plays deeper than Aliens.
Yeah, watch the skies indeed.
So for an overall rating, The Thing from Another World is going to get 3.75 vegetable men out of 5.
Ho, ho, ho.
Green Giant.
I think it was very good, especially considering its era and its peers. Definitely stands above most of the other movies in its genre from the time. I love the atmosphere, love the way character is established. In fact, it establishes character, I think, more successfully than most modern films do. The ideological differences between the characters are really interesting too. It's a pretty good sci-fi flick.
It never really gets old with me. In fact, I find myself enjoying it more and more every single time I watch it. The monster is pretty iconic, even though he doesn't really show up in the movie as often as you might like him to, but like we said earlier, that might not necessarily be a bad thing. It's kind of like the Jaws effect that helps make the movie work even more. Again, like you said, very heavy on atmosphere. The characters are really interesting in this movie, and it's just pretty tense at times. I like the way that they sort of use these different devices to help build tension, like the Geiger counters and stuff like that. It's just a really gripping movie, and definitely one of the better science fiction flicks from the 50s.
So, what about you guys? Have you seen The Thing from Another World? And if so, what do you think of it? Please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, whether it's liqueurs, movies, games, or beer,
if you're looking for reviews, you can find them right here.